Today we're making a proper homemade lasagna. Rich, meaty ragu, silky bechamel, and layers that actually hold together. I'll show you exactly how to get that deep flavour and avoid that classic watery mess. So we're going to start with a sofrito base. So here I've got 1 onion, 1 carrot, a bit of celery and some garlic, which we'll put in just before we continue with the sauce. So let's get our onion chopped. You do want to keep this fairly fine, just so it melts into the sauce nicely and all the water content comes out. Onto the carrot. What I want you to do is take the carrot and just slice one side. Therefore it sits flat on the surface and you've got more control when you're dicing. I think lasagna is definitely one of those dishes where if you don't do it well from the start, the end product, you don't get that same finish. And I think when people do have a good lasagna, they'll say, you know, it's one of their favourite meals, but when you get a bad one, it's something to forget. And alternatively, you could grate this if you wanted to. So for the celery, listen, if you haven't got it, don't stress. Your onions and your carrot will work just fine as a sofrito. Okay, so there's your sofrito, nice and finely diced. I'm going to heat this pan up now to like a medium heat and we're going to sweat that down for at least 10 to 15 minutes. And the reason we're doing that is we want to release all the water content and bring out the natural sweetness of the sofrito. Okay, pan's getting nice and hot. In with some olive oil. Okay, nice big pinch of salt. And what that's going to do is help to extract the water content and also season as you go. It's really important to season as you go. If you just season it at the end, then you'll end up with more of a salty finish rather than something that's well seasoned throughout. And remember, we just want to sweat these down. We don't want any colour whatsoever on this. We just want to bring out that natural sweetness. Okay, so this has been cooking now for about 10 to 12 minutes. So I'm going to take this off now and then we're going to start with the mince. As you can see, it's gone super soft, super sweet. And remember, taking it out at this stage is crucial because you don't want to then overcook this while you're browning off your mince. Okay, I'm going to give the pan just a little wipe out. Right, now for the mince. A little more olive oil into the pan. Get that back up to temperature. So for this recipe, I've got 750 grams of minced beef, and well, this is a blend of beef and pork, which a lot of people say is traditional in, you know, Italian cooking for making a lasagna. But 100% you can just use all beef if you wanted to. Just make sure it's got a good fat content. You know, anything from 10 to 15, even 20% will do. Okay, the pan is nice and hot, so I'm going to start to break in the mince. Okay, so half my mince is in. Just gonna ever so slightly just break it up. Then I'm gonna hit it with, again, a good pinch of salt to help release that water content. I'm just gonna let it sit there just for a minute. Let it really start to bring out all that water. If I was to start stirring it straight away, the heat's not getting back into the pan and it's not having a chance to release that water properly. The salt helps to do that. So I've switched to a flat-edged wooden spoon, just because I find it helps, you know, breaking down the mince. Because remember, your ragu is a sauce, you know, first and foremost, so you don't want big clumps of meat in there. Almost like really tough little meatballs. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to pour this into a sieve over a bowl, because I want to strain off that excess fat. Otherwise, your lasagna can become too greasy. So while that's straining, I'm going to go in with the second batch. A little bit more oil to get it going. And we do the same process. Okay, all the mince has now been browned off, giving the pan a little wipe out, and now we're going to start to actually build the ragu. So a little more oil in. Then back in with your mince and back in with the sofrito. Get that all mixed through nicely. And now I'm going to go in with the garlic. I think the flavour of the garlic comes out a lot better and there's a lot more pungency to it when you put it in at this stage rather than with the sofrito. Okay, stir that through and immediately the smell of that garlic coming through is fantastic. Garlic I think is optional as well. If you don't want to put garlic in, then don't. Okay, at this point you're supposed to put in, well, first and foremost red wine, which is optional. So I've not put any in today because I didn't have any. But also crucially tomato puree. I haven't got in it, I did use all of it on a previous recipe I've just done before this. So at this point put your tomato puree in and cook it out for at least 2 minutes just to take that rawness out. It's still going to taste fantastic though, so don't worry about that. So we're going to go in now with 1 tin of tomatoes. Then I'm going to fill that tin with water. And then in that goes two. So 400 grams of chopped tomatoes and 400 mils of water. So just gently stir that through. And then into this as well, I'm going to add a beef stock cube. You could just put, you know, instead of 400 mils of water from the tin, you could just put in 400 mils of beef stock. Okay, stir that through. Alternatively, you could just put water in if you wanted to from the tin. I just think because we're using a blend of beef and pork mince, I think that the beef stock helps just to bring that kind of beefy flavour through. So obviously it looks a bit of a watery mess at the minute, but this is going to simmer on the back stove for about 40-45 minutes. You could do this over hours if you wanted to on a low heat, but 40-45 minutes should do. So a bit of salt, not too much because that stock cube would have had some salt in it. Pinch of pepper. Okay, a quick taste. Okay, that's going to sit now on the back stove for about 40-45 minutes. So next we're going to go through the bechamel. Okay, so white sauce, very straightforward to make. So the best way to remember, you know, how much to put in of what, it's basically like a 1:1 to 10 ratio. So I've got 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of butter, and then 500 mils of milk. Now this is just milk that I've warmed through, but if you wanted to, you can leave this to warm for about 30 minutes with things in it like half an onion. You could grate a little nutmeg in there, some cloves, a bay leaf. The more infusion you put into that milk, honestly, it makes a massive difference to your lasagna. So in with the butter, you just want to melt that down gently. Okay, so once your butter is nicely melted, we're going to go in with our flour. And we're going to make a basic roux. So we'll just stir that in. Not using the whisk at this stage because I want to make sure that with the spatula I can get in all the corners of the pan. Sometimes with a whisk it doesn't actually catch it, things that are, you know, right into the corners of the pan. So mix that together and you want to cook that out for a couple of minutes just to take the rawness out of the flour. It's almost got like a wet sand kind of consistency. So now I'm literally going to go in with just a tiny bit of milk. And just stir that through. And it should kind of absorb pretty quickly. And then you go in again. You do it in tiny little stages, still not using the whisk. Just bring it together nice and gently. It's important that the heat is super low at this point. You don't want this to get crazy hot. And with a bit more, and it's kind of like making a, you know, when you make a risotto, you're adding, you know, a little bit at a time. It's almost got the consistency now of a good you know, smooth mashed potato. You think, you know, you keep pouring your milk in and it keeps going back to the same consistency. You think, oh, it's never gonna, I'm gonna run out of milk and it's never gonna form. But at some point it just comes together. So as you can see, I've used about half of my milk now, and I'm still on the spatula, still having patience with it, letting it come together, trusting in the process. Okay, now we're gonna switch to the whisk, and I'll go in with half of what I've got left. So I guess you could call that a quarter of our total volume of milk. And then I'm gonna go in with the final amount. I'm gonna go in with a little pinch of salt and a little bit of pepper. If you want to put white pepper in there so you can't see the individual, you know, flakes of pepper, then go ahead, but I'm happy with just black pepper. It should just ever so lightly coat the back of the spoon like that. Okay, our ragu has been sitting there for a good 40-45 minutes. Kept the lid off to let all of that moisture out, and it thickens beautifully. So as you can see, it's not too thick, but it's not thin neither. Right, let's build the lasagna. So very important, don't go for big thick layers, go for nice thin layers. I've got 6 big sheets of pasta here, so that'll be more than enough. And then once it's cooked and it's actually resting, it'll hold its structure, so you get that perfect slice. I'm just going to put a couple of spoons of ragu on the bottom. We're going to go with our first layer of pasta. If you think it's a bit big, just, you know, trim it up. Even when you're using the dry pasta sheets, I'm using fresh today, but even when you're using the dry pasta sheets, break them up. You know, make your own little jigsaw with it. Really, when it's cooking, it really does not matter. Now we'll go in with our first proper layer of ragu. So for this, I would say maybe 4 or 5 spoons. I'm using the tablespoon here. Again, you don't want your layers to be too thick, so you don't need much for each layer. Okay, now the white sauce, again, don't go mad when you're building your layers up with it. Just marble it through like that. Just let it naturally just drizzle. So just push that out to the edges, almost like you're icing a cake. Okay, the last thing to go on is a good sprinkling of grated cheese. I'm using cheddar. If you've got Parmesan, use that. Use whatever cheese you've got lying around. Mozzarella's another good one. Okay, and there's our lasagna. This is going to go into a preheated oven at 200 degrees for about 40 to 45 minutes until the top is nice and golden and bubbling. Take a look at this. That smells incredible. Now, very important, do not cut into this straight away while it's piping hot. Otherwise, it's just going to collapse into a mess. So we're going to leave this for about 10 minutes just to rest, just to settle a little bit. Everything will firm up nicely, and then we'll get that perfect slice. Right, let's get into this. Get the biggest knife you can find and trim around the edges so it releases from the dish. You can see all the individual layers. Superb. Right, let's try some. That is so good. There's nothing else to say. That is fantastic. Give this a go. Like and subscribe. And there'll be plenty more content like this coming up.